The ocean is large and mysterious, and the fact that we know so little about it makes it especially creepy. Tonight we will be going over some horror stories involving just that. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. It helps out the channel immensely. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated, as I'm currently trying to reach 125,000 subscribers, and we're getting pretty close. Anyways, sit back, do whatever it is you do to relax, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. The Challenger Deep is the deepest point of our planet, 6.8 miles below the ground we walk on, and nearly completely desolate. A true marvel on the Earth, and a miraculous piece of geography. Up until recently, most scientists believed that the Challenger Deep was the deepest point of our Earth. Keyword, recently. I work for the NOAA, or National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, as a submersible pilot. I've been on countless dives and seen countless things. It's an amazing job, one that I can't imagine ever not taking. If there is one place to appreciate nature and life as we know it, it's the ocean. Yet, the vastness of the ocean is a horrifying concept. We are slow in the water, and in the parts of the ocean where you can't see anything below you, it is hard to shake the thought of some massive marine predator snatching you up in its jaws. Despite this, our research knows no bounds. And around a month ago, my team made a massive discovery. A shift in the tectonic plates showed us that, in the cracks of the Challenger Deep, there was something below it, an entirely unexplored and unknown region of our world. The team was ecstatic, and negotiations for a press release were immediately brought to our supervisor. Unfortunately, he decided not to go ahead with the news just yet. According to him, after talks with the heads of the NOAA, they wanted us to go on an expedition to see what was there, and then showcase our findings to the world. I wasn't pleased with this, but I knew that it would make a better headline in the news if we actually found stuff down there. As one of the most experienced submersible pilots, I was chosen to head the mission. It would be a solo mission, one that, in my supervisor's words, would change the way we saw the ocean forever. So, after a ton of preparations and warnings and papers, my submersible was hovering over the water. My legs pointed directly at the opening to this new, deeper subsection of Earth's crust. My submersible, named Apollo by me, was reinforced heavily, with intense fortifications and the best titanium money could buy. She was a beautiful thing, one that I could never see myself as worthy of piloting. Yet, with one swift motion, I was dropped into sea. I won't bore you with the details of the descent, as nothing out of the ordinary occurred. I saw numerous creatures, critters, and otherwise, but nothing there was something I hadn't seen before, aside from a sperm whale swimming above me that made me nearly crap myself. After roughly 3 hours, I had finally hit the Challenger Deep. Admittedly, I was a little scared. Despite my numerous adventures into the bowels of deep blue, I had never actually been here at the bottom. It was empty. Not a speck of life besides maybe some bacteria. If loneliness could have a textbook definition, it would be this: dark, cold, and desolate. The fact anything could live down here whatsoever was unbelievable. Move forward. My intercom sprung to life, jolting me out of my complete awe. I had completely forgotten why I was here, trapped in the sheer complexity of the nothingness of this place. I complied, moving Apollo upwards a bit, and that's when I saw it, a massive gash in the seafloor, stretching for what could have been miles. It was wide, too, almost the entire width of a school bus. This wasn't what was shown in our scannings, with the gap being smaller and less wide. Whatever we had seen before, it had expanded. I reported this to my supervisor, who shared the same mild perturbance that I did. Maybe another shift occurred here recently. Maybe. His lackluster answer to my report did not inspire confidence. But I had to keep going. I am about to enter the opening, I said with a very obvious amount of uncertainty in my voice. Go ahead. Good luck, man, my supervisor responded. And with that, I entered the new deepest point of our Earth. The opening was normal in nature, with nothing but rock and earth surrounding my descent for the first 20 meters or so. However, after this, it all became dark again. There was no more wall, no more gash. I checked my sonar, and my mouth dropped to the floor in sheer amazement. I was inside a gigantic cave, nearly 1 mile on diameter. I was at a loss of words, my thoughts taking over where my mouth couldn't. My mind began to race, with intense ideas and fears and terrors unveiling themselves. What could be down here? Is it dangerous? Will I die? Etc. I reported my findings to my supervisor, who was, just like me, completely starstruck. Are you sure that's what you see? My supervisor sputtered out. Yes. The submarine had been equipped with the latest technology, and one of those was a radar, just in case anything like a whale or other large creature happened to be approaching me. This radar never failed, but it hadn't sprung to life in hours due to the lack of anything big at this depth. Yet it was suddenly firing off. I moved to look at it, and to my both amazement and terror, 5 large blips were moving towards me. I tried to keep myself together, desperately breathing in and out in a pathetic attempt to keep myself from hyperventilating, but it wasn't working. Nothing of this size should be down at this depth. My mind began to picture beasts, monsters, and ravenous creatures coming to rip me apart. In my nervous state, I hadn't realized my supervisor had been trying to talk to me. After nearly tripping over myself, I clumsily reopened the line. Why have you stopped? What is it? My supervisor sternly, yet curiously asked. There's 5 something moving towards me, sir. I have no idea what they are. I stammered out, my voice shaky and completely broken by the fear that gripped my throat. Wait, are you serious? How big are they? My supervisor asked. I checked the blips. They were 5 seconds from my position. They weren't massive, but they were still too big for this environment. A solid 7 to 9 feet in length. Roughly 8 feet. Just then, I felt a strong, hard, and intense hit come from the outside. Not like something was trying to break in, but rather like something had bumped into Apollo. I checked the 3D cameras, checking the side at which I felt the collision. I caught a glimpse of a tail, floating off into the darkness. It looked rigid and crustacean-like, shaped almost like an ace of spades. As I tried to make sense of it, another bump came from above. Whatever these things were, they were strong. Not strong enough to break through titanium, but strong enough to move the vessel a solid foot. I checked the cameras again, this time seeing a pair of legs. They looked like they came from some sort of insect, akin to the legs of a spider, but thicker and with barbs. Once again it floated into the darkness. Once again a hit came, this time targeting the pilot's chamber, scaring the piss out of me. I didn't need to check the cameras. The thing hit my window, and it didn't move from my view. I was completely stuck, entranced by what could only be described as a miracle of nature. A living fossil, floating in front of me, locking its round, pure black eyes with me, practically hypnotizing me to admire its sheer beauty, was a massive, yellowish tan, prehistoric creature. A Eurypterid, commonly known by paleontologists and biologists as a sea scorpion. I was dumbfounded. Sea scorpions had gone extinct over 250 million years ago, when the Great Dying happened, otherwise known as the Permian extinction event. Eurypterids were completely wiped out by this, so I was at a loss of words. No words could ever describe what I was feeling. I think it was admiring me back. It surely hadn't seen humans before. It tilted its insecty head at me, wondering what I was. Suddenly more of them came to the window, dumbfounded at what they were seeing. Baby sea scorpions sat atop what I assumed was their mothers, analyzing and internalizing what I was. I began taking photographs of the sea scorpions and sent them to my supervisor. He beamed back to me on the intercom as the cheers of my colleagues rang out in the background. "This is an amazing find. Do you see anything else?" "Not right now, but I'll update you if I do." As I resigned from the intercom once again, the sea scorpions continued to look at me. They almost seemed to gawk at me, as I did the same to them. Suddenly they all cleared, and a much larger, older-looking one got up to the glass. My submersible had arms, grabbers used to move away debris and rocks/minerals. It moved its shelled body to the arms, rubbing up against it, before lowering its head to show me a large parasite that had binded to it. I was confused as to what it was incentivizing, until finally I understood that it wanted me to remove the thing. The arms were not surgical, but fortunately, the parasite was big, meaning the arms could hopefully remove it. I knew it was risky, and if I accidentally killed it, I could be in massive trouble. However, somewhere deep within me, I knew it was desperate. So, as carefully as I could, I maneuvered the arms to reach the critter. It was very much like piloting a claw machine, with every movement a stressor on my psyche. Finally, I had a good grip on the parasite, with the other arm holding the elder sea scorpion's head steady, and with one good tug, the little thing came right off. The sea scorpion jolted, shaking its head in what I could only assume was pain. Yet once the pain subsided, it looked happy, spinning in place with an upbeat pattern. It got back up to the window, and with a happy, almost animal-like bunt against Apollo, it descended back into the depths, with the rest of its family unit following it. With that experience over, I descended further, my mind straight and my heart beating with just a little more pride. I reported the encounter with my staff who, when shown photos, absolutely thrilled. Fortunately, my supervisor was happy with me and green-lighted the further descent. The sonar continued to prove my suspicion, with the cave proving to be a worthwhile endeavor for the entire NOAA. Eventually I reached the middle of the cave when the radar came back to life. Something was approaching the ship again, something absolutely gigantic. It must have been at least 60 feet in length. Now, I was someone who generally despised people who promoted the idea of Megalodon living in the trench. However, seeing the radar blip with a massive white dot, you can't blame me for being scared of whatever was approaching. I had already seen a literal living fossil, and I wasn't against the idea of a massive monster being down here anymore. However, my fears were calmed as I realized how slow it was moving. Hell, it might as well have been sitting still. I entered the intercom again to my supervisor, who told me to move towards it. Despite my fears, curiosity got the best of me, and I moved towards the blip. In the darkness, I couldn't see a damn thing, so I began to brace myself for a collision just in case. But I never reached it, not before it let out a deep, loud, and inundating shockwave of noise. It sounded like a whale's call, but significantly louder and with more bass. My head rung from the sound, my heart nearly exploding out of sheer terror and anxiety. Suddenly the lights came face to face with the source of the noise. Thinking back on it now, humans really are tiny in comparison to some things. We are the apex predator, but we definitely aren't the top dogs in some areas. Size is definitely one of them. In front of Apollo was a gigantic fish, bony and large. Its head looked like it was made exclusively from bone, armored and rigid. The rest of its figure slowly came into view, its large body unveiling itself to the light. Another living fossil, a large, healthy, and majestic fish. The behemoth paid me no mind, its gargantuan body regarding me with no more than what felt like a simple look. Of course, I began taking photos, and sent them to my supervisor. The intercom shot to life again, and the ovation of my peers could be heard once more. Eventually its large, scaly torso moved into the darkness, never to be seen again. I was given the green light to go further down, but I realized after 3 seconds of descent that I finally reached the bottom. It was different than the Challenger Deep. It was gray in color, with little to no sand on its surface. Jagged scars permeated from its surface, scattered across a variety of areas. What was interesting was that the bottom felt soft, almost like it was a cushion rather than rock. I began talking to my supervisor, discussing what the next move was. He wanted to explore the place further, to see if any other living fossils existed down here. I couldn't blame him. Everything we knew about the ocean and its inhabitants had been flipped on its head. It was amazing. As I began to move forward, something odd happened. The ground beneath me began to vibrate a bit. At first I attributed it to shifting plates, but then out of nowhere, the ground moved completely, nearly knocking over Apollo. Suddenly the radar blipped a dot out, but it wasn't a dot at all. The white blip I would have usually seen encompassed almost the entire radar circle, as if the entire area around me was a living organism. I then did a sonar scan, and saw what my mind had been trying to suppress ever since the radar did what it did. What could only be described as a leviathan was moving, and this movement was occurring right beneath me. What I had landed on wasn't ground. It was a living thing, and I had just woke it up. In my panic, I tried to turn on the intercom, but it wouldn't even go. The station I had been using to communicate with my team had been taken completely off the system, so I did the only thing left. Get the hell out. I began piloting the submersible out of Dodge, moving it as fast as it could go. Suddenly Apollo stopped completely. Her engine was on, but she wouldn't budge. I checked the sonar, and I wasn't stuck on anything. It simply wouldn't budge. The intercom then came on, and my supervisor's voice was replaced by a loud, yellowing and deep voice. "No, stay." I was completely frozen, my mind a jumble of fear, shock, and confusion. Was it talking to me? I slowly shot the intercom back on. "Who are you?" I stammered out, my voice a complete mess of sounds and obvious nervousness. The creature bellowed back, its voice calm yet commanding. "I am not a who. Even if I were, it does not matter." My mind began jumbling thoughts, many associated with how on earth this thing was speaking English. Or, for that matter, speaking at all. Why are you here? How did you find this place? I responded truthfully. I am a marine explorer. A shift in Earth's sea crust opened up a hole beyond what we thought was the deepest point of Earth. I was tasked with going in. I couldn't see it, and thank God I couldn't. It probably would have given me a heart attack, but I could tell it was thinking of what to say. Are you here to harm or to heal? I was scared to answer, but I had helped that sea scorpion earlier. I thought that, if what I believed was my life being on the line, telling this deep sea monster I had helped it would be useful. Earlier, I encountered some Eurypterids. I helped this elder one with a parasite. It intook my words and responded back, "Thank you." In the calming nature of its voice, I eased slightly, my mind gaining some clarity to ask it further questions. What is this place?" I asked. The creature didn't respond for a while, but after what felt like eons, it finally spoke up. Many, many years ago, long before your species ever walked this planet, species of different eras managed to survive their respective calamities. The Eurypterids, as you call them, were not suited for their new world, so I called upon them to descend to this cavern, instilling them with an increased strength and tolerance for the conditions here. As time passed, more water-dwelling creatures came, and now they reside here. I am the guardian of this place, my purpose solely to defend and protect the nature here. I was at a loss of words. This thing, whatever it was inherently some sort of underwater deity. I couldn't even begin to wrap my head around the concept before it spoke through the intercom again. "You shouldn't be here." I snapped out of my thoughts, and upon hearing this, I became more confused than ever. I guess it could understand what I was thinking, because it fired up the intercom again. "You and your congregation are benevolent, but the rest of your kind is not. They pillage, loot, and destroy the ecosystem above. Many recent underwater creatures have come here, and they speak of you and your species' mayhem. I will seal this hole again, and you are not to ever return here. Do not tell any of your kind of my existence, and leave with the knowledge you have now, but no more." I understood. It was right, unfortunately. "I see," I muttered. The beast did not speak through the intercom this time, only making an incomprehensibly loud bellow that, if anywhere else, could have most likely took down a whole city through decibels alone. Before I began to comply and go ahead and ascend, one more question entered my mind. "How did you end up here?" The intercom stayed silent for the longest time, before it echoed to life for the last time of my journey. "Some secrets are best left secrets." A part of me was slightly annoyed at this, but I understood, and so I began my ascent. After resurfacing, my colleagues bombarded me with questions, demanding to know why I had basically gone off the grid. My supervisor was majorly pissed, but at the end of the day, none of it mattered. The next day, in the dead of night, I went back to my post on the station to see if the hole had closed, and sure enough, it did. I don't think I'll ever forget my experiences in the deep, and to be frank, who could? It was a jarring experience, and one that I think I'll never be able to truly comprehend. The media couldn't get it either, as the images of modern-day prehistoric monsters have swept through the internet like wildfire, with every site on the web talking about how interesting this truly is. If another crack forms, or Earth cuts open again and we find another one of these, however, I will not go back, for I still don't know what it was, and I don't want to find out. My wife Anna passed close to my son's 7th birthday. She was off visiting her family in Mexico and suddenly fell ill. About 72 hours from her showing the initial symptoms, we were told she'd passed away. I can't properly describe how devastating it was. I'm not going to go into that. Not here. I've lived in Guatemala my whole life. Well, I've been both north and south of the border a couple of times. There had always been something pulling me back to my home country. Anna and I had lived in Antigua ever since Gaspar was born, but we'd always talked about moving to the East Coast. She was born there, and it always seemed like a nice place to raise kids. Now, we only had time to have one child, but I was going to give him the best life I could afford. I mean, it's not like we didn't try to have more. Things just didn't work out that way. I could still see her whenever I saw my boy. He had her eyes and her brown hair. I couldn't look at him without remembering the promises we'd made. So a couple of months after Anna passed, I packed our things and moved. No more waiting. If you continue northeast past Puerto Barrios, there is a small coastal town. You know you're getting there when the road turns to dirt and the jacaranda trees grow taller. It's like nature knows people gotta stay longer in the sun. So the branches reach a little further, and the shade grows a little thicker. I'd grown up working with boats, so it was easy enough to get a job. A couple of folks knew Anna's family, so I had a foot in the door before they even met me. I got a cheap house made of beautiful smooth white stone, and one wall which was just raw exposed brick. It really reflected the town, stunningly beautiful, from the right angle. We moved in on short notice. The house had been empty since the previous owner passed, and the surviving family decided to sell it off. It was nice enough, but you could tell there was more history to it than you might be comfortable with. Little notches on the floor, subtle stains on the walls, a kitchen where the smell of fried fish wouldn't go away. It wasn't unpleasant, just different. Anna's death had been hard on everyone. I had to keep up appearances and focus on Gaspar. But now that I was settling into a new routine, things were changing fast. Gaspar was starting school and getting to meet all new friends. I guess, in a way. I was supposed to do that too. It's silly worrying about whether your work colleagues are gonna like you or not, but it can make or break your social life. And at my age, what little social life you have is precious. As I got used to the new town, I spent a lot of time by the sea. Boats would come and go at all hours of the day. There was this one station by the pier open 24 hours a day where everyone was registered, meaning there was always some disinterested teenager sitting in the booth, waiting to sign a sheet of paper. I think the smell was the hardest to get used to. Salt and fish and foam. Sick, sweet, and salt, all hitting you at different angles like the southpaw of a skillful boxer. On my first day of work, I was early enough to watch the first fisherman pull into the pier. A tired man in his early 50s pulled a cart with 4 coolers. Waving at the tired kid in the booth, he sat down on the bench next to me. Maybe he was overworked, or a little drunk, but I could tell he wasn't all right. He looked over at me with deep bags under his eyes. "You're new," he stated matter-of-factly. "I am," I said. "I fix boats." "Good," he nodded. Only reason mine floats is because it's too crap for the ocean to eat. She's not a picky eater, I smiled. What? I said she's not a picky eater, I repeated. You know, the ocean. Don't talk like you know her, Kwate, he said, giving me a cold look. You don't know her like I do. Don't pretend you do. I'm just making conversation. And I'm here to make a good one, he said, pointing a finger at me. Don't think you can figure this place out in a couple days. There's history in this land. There's bones in that sea. You understand? I get you, I said. I respect that. The man got up and dragged his cart along, smacking the side of the wall of a nearby house. Someone was already up to meet him, but they didn't seem too happy about it. I watched two young women help carry the coolers inside, talking to him with tired smiles, and he just waved them off. Don't mind Simon, someone said. He's crazy. I turned around and recognized my employer, Lino. He'd stood there for a while just to see what I was up to. I got up in a flash, reaching out to shake his hand. He accepted it with a smile. He's 30 years older than he looks, Lino continued. Been a grumpy old man since he was a kid, they say. I don't mind grumpy, I smiled. That's what towns are made of, right? Yeah, Lino grinned. So let's hope we get to be grumpy old men too. Lino's workshop felt like someone's living room. Pictures on the walls, music playing on the speakers, equal smells of motor oil, and Ron Zacapa. Lino was an absolute treasure of a person. If Don't Worry, Be Happy had a face, it'd be him. He had a green shirt that was older than my kid, and this sort of ill-kept handlebar mustache that he kept stroking when he tried to keep a serious face. I couldn't help but think he looked like a tanner Freddie Mercury, minus the teeth. We worked on the engine of a private boat that day. Leisure type stuff. Not anything big and functional. Someone came in saying the engine kept stalling. Lino figured they'd been getting too close to shore and kept getting trash stuck in the propeller, but I convinced him to do a thorough check. We found some engine tearing that might lead to a complete breakdown in a couple more runs, so we fixed it. It was quick and cheap, and Lino charged next to nothing for it despite it costing us half a day to work through. You make people who can afford a boat like this happy, they don't ever go somewhere else, he said. It's not just making friends, it's good business. By the end of our first day, we stopped outside the workshop to have a smoke. I hadn't smoked since I met Anna, but I didn't see the point to stick to that anymore. One puff and I got the coughs. Lino picked up on it, but decided not to ask. Instead, he pointed at a shed just off the pier. You see that? He said. Take a look. Tell me what you see. A shed, I said. Cheap roofing. No. See what's on the roof? I looked a little closer. 2 seagulls? That's right, Lino said. 2 seagulls. Now, have you noticed something strange about them? Other than not pooping on me? No. Yeah, but that's just the thing. There are gulls everywhere. Listen. I took another puff of smoke, letting it coat my lungs and simmer into my nerves. I turned my head up and closed my eyes. All I could hear was the pulse of the ocean and the clatter of everyday life coming from the buildings around us. I couldn't hear the gulls. They're silent around here, Lino said. You won't hear them screaming or attacking. They don't do that. BS. No, I'm serious, he smiled. They say so many people died at sea that even the gulls stopped laughing about it. They say that, huh? Well, Simon does. Lino nodded. But he loves those things, so he should know. You can see him feeding them before he goes out every night. I didn't question it. Grumpy people tend to prefer the company of animals. There was a place right next door to the workshop where I could get some cheap tapato, so I bought some for me and Gaspar. I took the long road back home, getting acquainted with the streets and those who lived there. A couple of folks gave me crooked looks and folded arms, but others waved and cheered as I passed. It would take some time, but I could see them warming up to me. By the time I got to the street, I noticed something. There were seagulls all over the roof, looking down on me. About 30 of them all in all. It was true what Lino said. They'd been unusually quiet. I'd never seen a seagull that hadn't screeched and whooped, but these were different somehow. As I approached, I could see them gathering at the edge of the roof, looking down on me. Gaspar was already home, waiting by the door. Before I got a chance to greet him, one of the gulls opened its mouth and screamed. One by one they joined in. It wasn't the usual cackling of seagulls. It was more of a laugh, a stunted, stuttered laugh. Gaspar and I had dinner in the living room, watching cartoons on the TV. I asked him about school, but he was too shy to talk about it. He wasn't really a fan of the soup I'd bought, but I promised he'd get used to it. There were so many other things to try too. If we ask nicely, I bet we can go out on a boat, I said. I think you'd like it. It's nice out there. I don't like the ocean, he said. It's too big, scary. That's what makes it great. You can swim for hours and there's always something new to see. I prefer YouTube. He finished up and hunkered down in his room. I sat down in the kitchen, popped open a gallo, and took the load off my feet. But even then, I noticed a gull on the fence outside, staring right into my kitchen window, and the moment our eyes met, it laughed, and not in the way that gulls usually do. The following morning after I sent Gaspar to school, I met Simon by the pier again. He had 5 coolers that morning, a successful trip, it seemed. He sat down on the same bench, sighed, and gave me a tired side-eye. He didn't have much to say, so I decided to take the lead on this one. They say you know the gulls, I said. Is that true? You better believe it, he nodded. They're my children. So what does it mean when they laugh at you? He turned to me, his expression growing concerned. They laugh at you? Yeah, a bunch of them did yesterday. Means you got misery coming, Cuate. They got you with the Rises del Mar. They sensed something. The laugh of the sea. Simon even had a name for it. They sense that darkness in you, Cuate. You can hide it from the rest, but you're not fooling my gulls. They're gonna laugh at you. Why'd they do that? Maybe they want you to chin up. Maybe you're bringing my gulls down. Maybe they don't think you belong. Could be a lot of things. He got up with a grunt and grabbed his cart. Without looking back, he ended the conversation. You think you belong here? He chuckled. You think this is meant for you? I had no answer, and in the distance, a gull laughed. I spent a couple of days working with Lino to get into the rhythm of things. Just like he'd said, the rich client came back with another boat. This one was more of a touch-up job rather than a pure fix. We just looked it over, cleaned it a bit, and called it a day. Took us just a couple of hours, and paid more than the last job 2 times over. We took some time working with the local fishermen. Quick fixes, mostly. Lino introduced me to half the town. I got told more names than I could count. One guy, son of another guy, cousin to a third guy. There was the dumb guy with the hot sister, the even dumber guy who married her. This was a town of stories and lives, and I was jumping straight into it with both feet at once. I stepped out of that workshop feeling lighter than I'd been in weeks. There was that glimpse of something new, that maybe, if I worked hard, I could make a life for myself. Then I peered up at the rooftops, and there the gulls sat, laughing. I felt my smile fade. They could see past it all. They could see and laugh at my pain. It was there, hidden under a vain attempt at fitting in. "Don't let them get to you, compa," Lino said. "It's just birds." But it wasn't that easy. I'd hear them every morning as I went to work. I'd see them on the rooftops, looking down on me. They never laughed at anyone else. Not Simon, not Lino, not the dumb guy with the hot sister. No one, just me. The risa del mar, the laugh of the sea. Maybe Misery didn't love company. Maybe she just lives by the coast. Sometimes the gulls would get louder. Sometimes the gulls would get louder. Whenever I stubbed a toe or stalled an engine, they'd laugh even harder. I would be so prepared to hear them that I'd get distracted, which would just cause more misfortune. I once tried bribing them, putting out a bowl of cooked, unsalted rice. They wouldn't touch it. They just circled it, picked at it, and laughed. I'd never seen a bird reject a free meal. One night as I went to bed, I thought about the people that used to live in that house. They'd slept in that room too, coloring it with their little dreams and hopes. I could almost see myself in 30 years, just like they did, laying in that same room, dreaming the same dreams. But in those moments, the space next to me felt colder than ever. I missed Anna with every breath of every day, but in those cold hours of the night, it just hurt a little more. And in those moments of weakness, where a tear might chase its way down my eyes, I'd hear the gulls outside laughing. "Please stop," I'd whisper into my pillow. "Please stop laughing." That just made them laugh harder, louder. "I've done you nothing. Please." But they didn't stop. They'd laugh all night, hoping to wound me for just a little longer. Lino had a slightly different view of things. He and the other locals stuck to this one saying that would slip out every now and then. "El que mucho se asante pronto deja de hacer falta," or "he who is often absent stops being missed." You have to put yourself out there if you want to be part of things. So instead of wallowing in self-pity, I was gonna have to put myself on the line. Now, Lino never once asked me about Anna and our lives together. He'd heard a little about it, and he knew better than to ask. So instead, he just did his best to bring me along. Fishing trips with some of his cousins, late nights at the bars watching sports and drinking rum. Gaspar would stay at a friend's house. He was quicker to pick up friends than me, I figured. Lino would introduce me to single women my age, but back off when he realized I wasn't ready. But with every step forward, there'd be that long walk home at night, and every single time, there'd be a gull, laughing its heart out, reminding me that at the end of it all, that room would be as dark as ever, as cold as ever, dead. There was one morning when I hadn't slept that well. As I ran into Simon, the gulls were at full force, circling me, laughing from up high. I snapped at Simon as he came by, pulling his carts. Just 3 coolers that morning. "What do I gotta do?" I asked. "How long are they gonna laugh at me?" "You getting mad at the birds, Guate?" Simon had the same laugh as the gulls. Maybe they got it from him. "I'm serious. I said. This is ridiculous. You blame the mirror for making you ugly, too? Shut up. He stopped for a moment and looked at me, shaking his head. You know the last one the gulls laughed at? He asked. Same woman that lived in that house of yours, not long before she died. You trying to scare me? Ask anyone, he continued. Right before she died, they were all over her. And her husband? Who knows? He never left the house. You'd forget he even lived there. So what are you trying to say? That I'm about to die? Simon rolled his eyes and grabbed his cart. I'm telling you to stop being weak, he snapped back. Have a drink, cut your hair, kiss a woman. He flicked a couple of coins at me as he wandered off, still laughing, just like the gulls. That day turned out awful, just awful. I broke an expensive spare part and cut my palm on a sharp knife. When Lino came over to help, I turned him away. I didn't even think about it. Even though my ears couldn't hear them, my heart echoed with the shrieking laughter of the gulls. The Risa del Mar. When I sat down to clear my head, Lino joined me, giving me some time to calm down. You know the people who lived in that house before me? I asked. Lady de Leon? He asked. Yeah, I remember her. Simon says the gulls laughed at her before she died. Yeah, I remember, he said. Can't say it was a big surprise. She was ancient, but we miss her. What about her husband? Lino raised an eyebrow at that. Then he nodded, as if a light had come on in the back of his mind. Right, he said. I forget about him sometimes. He never left the house, but you could see his stupid red hat in the windows. Did he die too? I suppose he did. Lino nodded. I can't remember. Coming home that evening, I anticipated the gulls sitting in a row along the roof laughing at me. They knew I'd had a bad day, and they weren't about to let me forget it. But they weren't there. The house was empty, not a single gull, not a hint of a laugh. It was nice in a way. It showed me a home the way it was meant to be seen. I wouldn't dread going to sleep that night, but I still felt like something was off. For all the unease those birds brought me, there was something stranger about them suddenly going away. Had I done something wrong? Gaspar? I called out. I'm making shrimp. You want coconut rice or the usual? There was no response. I walked out into the hallway looking around. He wasn't in the living room, not in the backyard either. By the time I dug through his room, I could feel my pulse rising. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't coming out. I called out and there was no response. Gaspar? I kept calling, but he wasn't out back or out front. He wasn't coming down the road. I expected his voice, but got only echoes of mine. He should have been home by now, and the Seagulls were gone. I called his school, but he wasn't there. I asked for the name of his friend, so I could see if he stayed with them for dinner, but I got an unusual response. What friend? Turns out, Gaspar had been having trouble in school. He had trouble relating to the other kids, and they had trouble fitting him into groups. He wouldn't get into fights, but he would blend into the background. They'd forget he was even there. I called every kid in his class, asking if they'd seen my boy. Most of them didn't know his name. No one had seen anything. He just put on his backpack and wandered off, like every other day. Or so they thought. They couldn't remember for sure. Finally, I turned to Lino. I asked him to reach out to everyone he knew. My boy is missing, I stuttered. You must help me. I must find him. You have a kid? He asked. Of course, he's Gaspar, my boy. You never talk about him, Lino said. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I have a son, I emphasized. I'll make some calls. What does he look like? I looked at one of the pictures on the wall. Gaspar, Anna, and me. It was blurry, sun-bleached. Brown hair, I said. He has brown hair. What else? I didn't have an answer. For some reason, I couldn't think of anything. Not his eyes, not his smile. I could barely even imagine his voice. I hung up on Lino and looked out the window. A single gull sat on the fence outside, its head cocked to the side. They weren't laughing anymore. If anything, it seemed concerned. I drove around town asking anyone and everyone if they'd seen him. A boy walking around with a backpack, looking lost or scared. No one had seen him, heard him, nothing. Finally, I drove by this run-down little one-story house, its walls patched with driftwood planks and sheet metal. It was impossible not to recognize the man swaying back and forth in a hammock on the porch. Simon, listening to his radio. I stopped. I wanted to ask him if he'd seen my boy, but I knew the answer already. Instead, I got out of my car and called out to him. "Did you ask them to do this?" I yelled. "Is this you?" "Is this what?" He yelled back. "What do you want?" "You don't like me, so now the gulls don't like me, and now my boy is gone." Simon rolled out of his hammock and turned off the radio. He gave me a curious look, not angry, concerned, like the gulls. "He didn't come home. I can't find him," I continued. "I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, Simon." "They laugh at pain, Kwate," he said. "Pain is for those who are still there. Those who are gone don't suffer anymore." "Stop it with the riddles," I snapped. "I'll make you swallow your teeth. Just tell me what they did to my boy." Simone picked something up from the side of his hammock and walked over to me. Still not angry, he looked up at the sky. "I don't think they were laughing, Kwate," he said. "I think they were trying to warn you." "That's not what you said. You said they laugh at my pain." "Two things can be true, you know. They're birds. They're not complicated. But you know what I think?" He took a swig from a bottle and pointed eastward. A long line of gulls could be seen in the distance, circling something. "Maybe they're waiting for you," he said. "Pay attention. Listen." I got back in my car, trying to see the gulls. It was a weird angle, but I could hang my head out the window if necessary. Simone knocked on my window. "No," he said. "They're going out to sea." He opened the car door and held out a hand. "We'll take my boat." Simone's boat was in desperate need of a touch-up. He'd been stubborn about getting it fixed, but I could hear the engine struggling the moment it puttered away from the pier. We were heading east, where the gulls still circled. I had a moment of doubt. I'd been projecting my insecurities on these birds for weeks at this point. What if I was still doing it? But no, that wasn't it. Despite it all, I could tell Simone had his heart in the right place. When it hits the fan, you don't want the person who tells you everything is gonna be okay. You want the one who spits on the problem and says, "Let's get this done." The sun was setting, slowly but surely. A stiff breeze rattled the buttons on my pale orange shirt. I couldn't smell the ocean anymore. I'd gotten used to it. Something hit the boat. Maybe a rock, or a sudden push from a wave. Simone tried to keep us straight, but it was too late. I fell overboard, plunging into the dark. For those who haven't swum in the open sea, there's nothing quite like it. An eternal mix of emerald blue in every direction, turning into a shimmering orange as the sun sets. In the distance, you might see a few spots swimming about, only to realize they're fish the size of your hand. But down there, it all looks small, even you. And don't look down. At the best of times, you see the immense darkness sucking you down, and in the worst of cases, you see something coming up. I forced my head above the surface. The sun had already set. A mild fog was settling over the ocean surface. I couldn't see anything. Left, right, it was all just water. Waves pushing me in every direction, grabbing a hold of me. I could feel a chill reaching up to spill the warmth in my chest. My toes were already tingling. As I kicked, one of my shoes came off, tumbling downward like a slow leaf in the wind, rocked by invisible currents. I called out to Simone, but I could barely hear my voice over the waves. There was no way he'd hear me over the engine. Then again, I couldn't even hear him anymore. He must have kept going, or sunk. But I could hear something else. Seagulls. I listened and swam until my arms ached. My eyes burned from the salt. I could feel my legs taking longer and longer to kick as my head dipped further under the surface. I had trouble getting my mouth up. I swallowed a mouthful of salt water as my rhythm broke, and in another 2 kicks, I was submerged. I counted to 30, kicking as hard as I could. Then, out of nowhere, my toes touched sand. I pulled my way onto a long deserted beach. Not a bird among the trees, no insects in the bushes. A steady wind pulled on the leaves of the blue sunflowers resting under the sweet gum trees, making them rattle like a dry applause. Then I saw people, just a couple of them standing further in by the tree line. Dark, tired eyes, lips so chapped they looked like leather, a man with a broken shirt hanging off his left shoulder, a middle-aged woman in a folk dress. As I approached, they stepped back. "I need help," I wheezed. "I need to find my boy." They didn't say a word. I took a couple steps forward and they faded into the dark, disappearing into the shade of the trees. They left no footsteps in the sand. There were so many more. The further I went and the closer I looked, I saw them. Quiet people, looking on from afar. If I got too close, they'd step away. If I stopped to look, they did the same. Dark, tired eyes, asking me silent questions. Some of them looked old, not in age, but in clothes. 100 years, 200 years, maybe 1,000. One of them was an old man with an unusual red bucket hat. I looked a little closer but couldn't figure out what he reminded me of. Perhaps I forgot. I'd been so preoccupied with my own troubles and woes that I hadn't considered Gaspar. I hadn't stopped to make sure he was okay. Much like the rest of town, and even his school, I'd forgotten about him. Maybe that's what the gulls were laughing at. Not me messing up another social faux pas with Lino and the boys, but me forgetting to check in on my boy. "I'm sorry, Anna," I muttered as I dragged my feet through the cooling sand. One shoe missing. I was just looking at me. It was just about me. I forgot. There was a fire up ahead, a campfire on the beach. Stepping closer, I could see 2 people sitting on a log, staring into the flames. A tall man and a boy. I recognized neither. I was having trouble focusing on the man. One moment he was tall and slim, the other he was short and fat. He was young, he was old. He was handsome, he was ugly. He would shift and turn as if to change whenever I thought I had an idea of what he looked like he refused to be what I expected. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. The words didn't come from him. Instead, they came from the tree line. A dozen dialects all at once. A single chorus of voices. I cannot care for you, they said. I'm looking for someone, I said. I don't need you to care. Who are you looking for? A cacophony, struggling voices, having been dormant for years. I'd hear them fight to remember the words and to roll their stiff tongues. My boy, I said. I'm looking for my boy. Is this him? They asked. I looked at the boy by the fire. I couldn't say. I couldn't place him in my mind. I could only remember what I'd said about him, or what others had said. I could remember Anna telling me how she loved his curly brown hair, but I couldn't picture it. I care for him, they said. I do not forget. The voices crackled, breaking into monotones. They left me in the woods, a man said. I slept in the mountains. No one came to find me, said another. I fell over. They kept going. There were hammerheads in the water. They never asked my name. People abandoned, forgotten, sacrificed, left to die by the side of the road or stuck in a mountain crevice. If he is here, you must find him, the choir said. Will you look? I will look, I agreed. I'll look anywhere. You may have to stay for long, they said, until perhaps you are forgotten too. I don't care. Good. In the blink of an eye, I was along a country road. My leg was broken. I was screaming for help, but no one came. The flies wouldn't stop gathering on my face, picking at dry blood, pain, desperation. They should have been there hours ago, but they forgot. Bleeding through the night, passing from warmth to cold to warmth again, serenaded to the other side by whispering insects. Then, watching a boat disappear on the horizon, my legs growing weak, the waves growing higher. They must have noticed I was gone. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't care. Movement in the dark creeping closer. Something brushing up against my leg. Something with rough skin. A single eye reflecting the moonlight as a hammerhead shark waits for me to die. Life after life after life. All forgotten. And at the end of every final breath, the gulls laughed in the distance, trying to make the others see, to listen, to remember. It was ceaseless, relentless. In one moment I'm drinking myself to death, hoping someone would find me in a bathtub. In the next I'm outside a bar with a knife in my gut. I'm in the corner of a burning building, but the fireman forgot to look for me. Death after death after death. But I have to keep going. Then, a boy. He didn't want his dad to worry, so he said he would stay with a friend. Instead, he hid in his room, looking at pictures of his mother. He made his own bed, cooked his own dinner. It would be okay. He rarely left the house. He skipped school most days. But there was no point for him to learn, since he couldn't picture a future anyway. He'd get by somehow, or maybe he wouldn't. Maybe it didn't matter. Another voice joining the choir of things that didn't need to be. It was a cruel twist of fate. I couldn't remember him no matter how hard I tried, and even if I knew in my heart of hearts he was among them, I couldn't picture him. But I could remember Anna, and thinking of her eyes and her hair, I could remember him too. I remembered her words, whispering his name as she cradled him, and with those sprinkles of thought, a picture started to form, a name, a shape, a voice. He's afraid of the sea, I said. He'd rather watch YouTube. Is that okay? Asked the boy by the fire. Yeah, I sobbed. That's okay. We can watch together. I took him by the hand. The people in the dark stepped aside. The man by the fire remained silent, watching as we went. And in the distance the gulls laughed, not out of menace or spite, but out of relief. It hasn't been an easy life since then. Both Gaspar and I had healing to do. We had to start talking openly about Anna and the life we would expect without her. It was painful, but necessary. We talked about where we'd celebrate the holidays, where we'd go on holiday, and instead of presuming or hoping, we talked about it, and we made plans. Maybe he'd have a new mother someday. Maybe he'd even have a little brother or a sister to play with. He said he'd like that. Whenever I was ready to try, I would have his blessing. I took him out with Simone's boat once. I helped fix it up a bit first. The man is saltier than the sea, but he's honest. I'm surprised how much Gaspar likes him. I think Simone had a soft spot for Gaspar, too. Maybe kids are like gulls in a way. Simple. The gulls don't laugh no more. Not for me. Not for anyone. Now when Simone goes to feed them, I sit next to him. Gaspar does too. And they humbly accept whatever we offer.